Hello everyone, my name is Axelablaze, and welcome to the newly revamped Axel and Friends podcast, because I figured if you want to have a podcast, you should probably have more than one person on it to talk about things, because otherwise you're just talking to yourself, and that's kind of boring. But I figured for my first inaugural, I guess we could call it season 2 of the podcast since it's starting new, I invited Manga Crash onto the podcast so we can discuss some of our favorite and least favorite axed manga. So, Crash, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the people that don't already know you. I mean, let's be honest, most of the mutual people already know you, but for those that
Yeah,
don't.
probably. Yeah, hello, I'm Manga Crash. I have a manga channel, as my name would suggest. And it's an honor to be here on the very first episode of season 2. And
Yes.
it's just a topic that I just love a lot.
Yes,
So, yeah.
as a fellow person who reads more manga than we probably should, I figured you were the best person to cover this topic along with me, and dive not necessarily too deep, because I mean, let's be honest, there's only you can only go so far back into like Shonen Jump's internet history with like axed
Yeah.
manga that has been uploaded to the internet. Like the stuff from decades ago. I mean, like, unless some random person was just like, "Hey, I've got 3 volumes of this rando jump series from 1987 that got axed," like that stuff is
Yeah.
gone.
I mean,
So,
if I can plug the stream that you're gonna be in, I was just getting the covers for the jump covers for the stream, and most of them are like axed manga, and there's tons of shit you don't hear about, like from the 80s and 90s, and even from like the 2000s.
oh,
Most manga of Jump is canceled, so
oh, absolutely. I mean that's the thing, is that like when it comes to Shonen Jump, when it comes to, I mean, the vast majority of manga magazines, manga platforms, web stuff in general, more stuff, hundreds upon hundreds of series are introduced each year, but the vast majority of those new series get axed within like 20 chapters. Like that's just how it is. I mean, like that's just it's a very dog eat dog world for manga. Especially, I mean, not that the comic book industry isn't the same, but it's definitely eclipsed by the sheer volume of manga that just gets churned out, like, on a monthly, let alone weekly basis. Like, it's crazy. So,
yeah. And comics is different because I think even if they like fire an author, there's someone else who's gonna join in and continue that story or that character for the most
right.
part.
And not to mention, like, they will reboot things over and over and over
Yeah.
again. That's why you have so many quote unquote number one issues for so many things. But yeah, I digress though. Like, but I'm very interested to see what you've collected for that stream, because yeah, I
There's
like, I don't know.
there's more than 300 series, so I saw a lot of stuff. A lot of them isn't aren't really that interesting, but there are like some of them who I can't wait to show you guys. So
Jeez.
it's
All
gonna be
right.
fun.
Well, I'll let people stew on that a little bit more while we discuss things, and we'll definitely bring that up again before we end. But
Yeah.
so I guess moving right along then into things, obviously the big series that spurned this on, the series that is near and dear to my heart and my channel, Poor Cop and Dolphin, finally got the
Yeah.
axe with the last issue of Shonen Jump, and I am a sad boy. I'm a sad dolphin man
I'm a set shark
enthusiast.
man.
Yes.
Oh, well, the Discord avatar probably is not going to show,
Yeah.
but yeah, I have the Shark Man of the last chapter as
Yeah.
my avatar.
I it was that was one absolutely fantastic fake out. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, it was just so funny. I was just like, oh my god, it happened, and then I was just like, nope, he's
No.
actually riding on a surfboard right now. It's just like, oh okay, that's fine too, I guess.
The thing I want to say about Art Cop and Dolphin is that at least it's a decent ending, which we don't get a lot on X manga. And I think as it is, you can still read it. Like if someone hasn't joined in for the ride, you can still grab the manga and get a full experience.
Oh, absolutely. Cop and Dolphin got uh I- it's no stretch to say it had a second lease on life during the last manga axing. And I think it was because Ryuhei Tamura is a veteran author, and they were like, "Oh, right, we kind of axed him at like 30-ish chapters with Hungry Marie. Let's give him that like 10 extra chapter span just to like round things out." And I mean, don't get me wrong, there were still certain loose ends. I mean, the big one being everything in regards to Poseidon was just dropped,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But in terms of like at least the story of like the characters that we did know of, it did close things out, thankfully. But it still stings that it didn't. It stings that it didn't get the foothold that I wanted it to get with the Japanese audience for it to last longer. But I mean, that's the thing, is that like, especially since the beginning of Cop and Dolphin was still very gag oriented, at the very least, like every other chapter. Gag series are very hit or miss. And while I think that like it was greater once it started leaning more into that mystery battle shonen pivot, the damage was already done, and it just couldn't recover from that.
But even then, I think, and maybe this is just because I'm a bit biased, but I think Tamura is really good at delivering gags. So I'm still very
I
fine with
agree.
the early chapters.
I absolutely agree with that. I loved Cop and Dolphin from chapter one, but I know that there were a lot of people that were like, "Oh, it got more interesting with the mystery stuff," and like, I mean, even then, it's not like people were necessarily picking it up to like fully read it. They were like, "Oh, well, that looks more interesting now," without actually doing anything
Yeah.
with it. But it is what it is. Like I said, it had a it had a better time than Hungry Marie, which was the other Tamura uh manga that happened after Beelzebub. But yeah, I don't I don't think he was ever gonna succeed really with a rom com. And the fact that it was like a body switch gender bender rom com on top of that, like, though, I mean,
Yeah.
those two are very hit or miss. Ayakashi Triangle is lucky, but I mean, then again, they're just, that's just soft core porn in like
Yeah.
every chapter. So I mean,
Ayakashi Triangle, in my opinion, survives with the ecchi being drawn by forget his name, but by the author that it is.
right, of To Love Ru.
Yeah, like it's just he's really great at art style. So that's why I like to love Rui. Wasn't his writing? But his art is great. Has been since like the 90s.
Yeah,
So
I would say it's like Ayakashi Triangle is probably the second coming of Yuna of the Haunted Hot Spring, in terms of like, it's just an Ichi-ish series that like it's gonna be able to stick around because of that. I mean, that being said, like the sales for Ayakashi Triangle are definitely better than Yuna the Haunted Hot Spring, but yeah, it's
yeah,
Ayakashi Triangle is gonna be around until they decide that they're done with it. In all honesty, at this point, like I do not see that series sales dropping at any point in time, really, to make it so that they decide to cancel it. Regardless of how it might be perceived to be performing in the magazine, the sales are king for that series.
I think it's one of those series where it probably isn't doing well on the
The reader surveys.
exactly the reader surveys, and it's doing well on sales, so
Yeah.
they'll keep it around.
Yeah.
What's important is the sales at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like 90% manga sales and 10% magazine performance. Because, like, obviously there are certain series that they do perform better in the magazine than they do in sales. I would say, like, a key example of that would be, like, Magu-chan, God of Destruction. Like, Magu-chan definitely does better in the magazine than it does in sales.
Yeah.
And I would even say High School Family, I think, fits that bill, too. But, I mean, like, that author has just managed to find a niche in Shonen Jump almost every time that he's been in it. So I don't know what kind of magic power that is that he has, but like it works. So
I'm really curious into reading his previous work, Isobe Isobe, I think is the name.
Yes,
just because it looks so different from the normal Shonen Jump series.
Yep. I mean, like it is very stylized compared to like other, like even other gag series. Like it is very stylized in comparison. So it's and the fact that like its origin was that like it was in the magazine because One Piece was on break and they needed some kind of filler, so they put it in, and then they're like, hey, this actually did well enough, so here you go, here's a serialization. And then like it went on, I believe, for like 200 chapters, which is, that in and of itself is crazy, but like it's just kind of what it is.
I mean,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask what others do you have. I was looking at my not necessarily my list, but the manga that I read that got canceled, and I haven't read many that I read that I began reading when they were canceled. Generally, what happens is that I started reading them weekly, and they get X'd. I have a bunch of them from like the early 2000s, from the early 10s, which was when I started reading manga. I was gonna ask you if you ever read Metallica Metaluca.
Yes, I did. I didn't. I can't remember if I finished it or not, but I know that I did read it. And for whatever reason, I did not put that on my list, but I did.
It's not a manga that I really love. I just wanted to bring it up because it was my first manga that I read that got canceled. And when I started reading it, I wasn't aware of the acts of Jump. So I was like, oh, I'm beginning a manga that is just starting. It's gonna be big. It's gonna be probably the next Battle Shonen, because I thought that's how it worked. And then
reality came crashing down.
Yeah, like 20 chapters.
Yeah, no, like every series that I have read, for the most part, that has been an axed series is one that I did start on the weekly grind, like you did. That is, I don't think there's a single one on this list that I'm seeing in front of me that was one where it was just like, I read it after it got canceled. But, no, I do remember Metallica Metaluca. Again, for whatever reason, I didn't think of putting it on my anime list for, again, whatever reason, but I remember that name. And it's important too to remember it's like it's not to be confused with like that mag metal or whatever anime that I think I put on Netflix. Two completely different series to my knowledge, but no, I don't know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I was gonna say that this one definitely didn't get an anime adaptation.
Definitely, I have yet to see an axed series that I think that has gotten one. Well, no, that's not true. 100 was a series that got an anime, despite being axed. At least I think it was axed. That was just another one of those, like, remember like a couple of years ago where the trend was just putting like women in like skin tight outfits and then outfitting them with like mech like equipment and stuff. Like that was during that trend. And I know that the manga only had like 13 chapters, but then they gave it like a 23 episode anime. I think it might have been based off light novels. I'm not 100% sure on that, but like, and that's honestly the only reason why I can think of why it would go as far as it did. But uh, yeah, I think that's the only one to my knowledge of like an Axed series getting an anime still. But not that there
For
aren't.
me, it depends if we consider I'm from Japan X or not.
No, I I wouldn't count that just because that was a series that got moved over to another magazine because the
Yeah.
Japanese government was just like, "Hey, keep writing this for tourism." So like,
Yeah, like
yeah.
nobody read it besides some Japanese people and like five of us.
Yeah. No, I read like 4 chapters of I'm from Japan and then like it just stopped being fan translated. Not that I can really blame them again, like, because the thing with I'm from Japan is that unless you're from Japan or know Japan, you're not going to care about a series that is discussing the various prefectures of Japan and like the tiny intricacies of those prefectures. You're not.
Yeah, because it wasn't like educative fun. It was just like it's a bunch of references that you're not getting. And I kept reading it. I read it till the end because it was on Manga Plus. So I read it anyways, but it wasn't that fun.
No, it really wasn't. Like even from like the chapters that I did read, it just was not great. It really wasn't. And I like for the people from Japan, maybe they liked it more. Who knows? But like it just was not a fit for me. But I will say, speaking of gags from that time, the one that I am mad that got canceled was Teenage Renaissance David Kuhn.
Yeah,
I loved David Kuhn a lot.
I knew you were gonna say that. And yeah, that was the one that started at the same issue as I'm from Japan, and it was great. I really liked it. Um, it reminds me a little bit of Roboko. It also had a bunch of jump gags and jump parodies, but it had its little gimmick, and it was a fun gimmick of like the Louvre art pieces.
Yes, I
Um,
absolutely loved that each chapter included like at least 3 different recreations of art pieces and whatnot, like famous
yeah,
art pieces, whether or not it involved those characters or whether that was them like recreating like completely unrelated paintings or whatnot. I thought it was definitely a really cool niche that it had. And I mean, that being said, it also had one of the best side characters of all time, Mannequin Piscoon,
yes,
who is the goat. Like, just the chadliest of Chad statues, despite being just a tiny little, like, cherub just pissing into a pond or a fountain.
yeah. One little detail I liked about that character is that he used Jotaro's at from
Yes.
JoJo's Part 3
Yes.
for, for
He
some reason. That
he was great.
yeah,
The series in general was great, but again, it's another one of those cases of a gag series that is either hit or miss. Um,
yeah.
I think it made it to just under 30 chapters, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it
Um,
did exactly 30, I think.
yeah,
I'm
so
not
it
sure.
was at least able to escape like the first potential axe that could have come swinging down on it, but still unfortunate that it got caught by the second one. But I don't. There's like other gag series too that like I don't know, like have also been hit or miss that have come out. But I cut you off. What you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say the exact same thing as you. That there's a lot of like gag manga that got axed, and I mean we could do a speed run just of many of them if we wanted.
Well, I mean,
Um,
let's be honest. Top tier that got canceled was a Gravity Boys, but
yeah,
at least for Gravity Boys, it got one of the longer runs comparatively to other axed series. Because
yeah. I
like
mean
the
we got
Oh,
We got
go
50
ahead.
chapters.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. No, well, I was gonna say though, like when you think about it, like most series, if they make it to 50 chapters, usually they're just good from that point forward. Like it's very rare that you have another series that like they'll make it to that point and then get canceled. More often than not, Jump is just like, all right, you're in, you're with us, unless like they just have absolutely stellar newbie performances that just are like, all right, there's new blood that is just better than this. We've got no other things to axe, so you just gotta go. Um, but like more often than not, though, like again, series that get to that point, they're usually in it for the long haul at that point. Um,
Yeah.
but
I feel Gravity Boys was just a case of being in a year where everything big was ending. Because if you look
yes,
at the roster of Jump at the beginning of 2020 and at the end of 2020, and there's just so much like big names like IQ, Kimetsu no Yaiba, Yuna,
The Promised
Promise
Neverland.
Neverland. Yeah, there's just so many manga that just ended
Um,
that year, so
and
newbies could
Actage
last.
ended too, but not
Yeah,
for the reasons we wanted it to.
yeah.
But and Chainsaw Man too at the very
Hmm.
end of 2020.
Yeah,
Um,
even we never learn. I
yes,
think the same week or the week before.
yes. So that was a big one of the biggest years since like I want to say did
Yeah,
Beelzebub
that
end in
one.
2016?
I think so. I
Because
think so.
2016 was like the other big year where they ended like three or four series. Because they ended Beelzebub and Toriko in that same year, and I feel like
They,
they ended other things too.
I think S Class was also that year.
I think you're right, but like
'Cause-
comparatively, this last year was just big in terms of like leaving so many vacancies in the magazine, and that's why so many new series were able to actually get a foothold. Like that is absolutely a rarity that you get to see that many new series get to just stick around.
yeah. I mean, Gravity Boys wouldn't have lasted as long. Mori King wouldn't have lasted as long.
Mitama
Um,
Security wouldn't have either. That was the other
yeah,
big one. Like Mitama
yeah.
Security was the one that got released around this either the week before or the week after Mission Yozakura Family made it to a
Mhm.
year in serialization, and then that was it. That was
I think the problem,
definitely another one that would not have lasted that long normally.
but I think the problem with Mitama was just I think people didn't want to begin reading it. I think the art style drove people off
Oh, absolutely.
because everyone there's two people that I know. It's people that don't like Mitama and or that never read Mitama and don't want to read Mitama. There's the people who read it and liked it.
Oh,
I never
absolutely.
met never met anyone who's read it and didn't like it. So
And that's the thing is that like art style is definitely a barrier to entry for manga, especially in Weekly Shonen Jump, especially for manga where their life depends on the impact that they make within the first 5 chapters of their release. And Mitama definitely was another one of those series where like the art wasn't its strong suit, but the comedy was good. I mean, again, still subjective from person to person, but I thought overall like it was really funny. It unfortunately it kind of it jumped the shark. I think like once Mitama got like that light ball suit power, like that was just going to the
yeah,
end at that point. But not
I,
that it
I
wasn't
think
funny.
I think at that time you already knew the manga was gonna get canceled because that was like really towards the ending.
Yep. Yep.
So
Um,
that is unfair with a Gravity Boys. Well, it's not really unfair, but a Gravity Boys, the Penis World arc. Those two just feel to me like authors who were just told, okay, your manga is gonna have like 4 or 5 chapters, and you can do whatever. And they said, okay, well then I'll do whatever.
yeah. No, I think you are spot on with that because like the god the penis magic arc of a Gravity Boys was, well,
It was,
it was fantastic, but it was also kind of
well,
like, what is going on?
yeah, it was so insane that I loved it. And another manga that it's not a manga, it's one chapter that made me feel that way was Bone Collection's second to last chapter. It's just so bonkers that to me it's the best one out of the entire run. Just because of how crazy everything is, and it was that way because the author just didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
And
Bone Collection. It just that was definitely another one where like the art was rough, like, and that again another series I think that had that barrier to entry. Um, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great, and that was the
no,
thing, is that like people were just indifferent to it. So that one just kind of was just like whatever. Um, I will
I thought
say,
it was.
oh
Sorry,
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it was very charming. The art style, the humor, I liked it. Wasn't great, but I liked it. To me, it was charming. So I like the series. Probably wouldn't give it more than a 6 or 7 out of 10. But I mean, I wouldn't have minded if it had kept going on for a little bit.
That's fair. Um, I I think I'm one of like the 7 people in the world that actually liked Mori King. Um,
I
and
like
there's
Mori
so many.
King at.
Oh no, go
I
ahead.
like the first. Sorry, I like the first 2 volumes or so of Mori King, but I felt like the jokes just kept being more or less the same, so I kind of got tired of it by the end.
I can definitely agree with that. It definitely, it should have ended earlier. Once they started the whole World King arc at the end, it was just kind of like, really, we're doing this
Yeah.
again. Um, like I definitely thought like it started out better and then started to trail off as time went on. It gave me Zatch Bell vibes. And I
Never
think
read.
that's the reason why I liked it as much as I did, because it made me think of like Zatch Bell. I mean, that being said, one of my favorite chapters was actually towards the end of the series, where like they went to this one like insect breeder to try and train, and like Mori King and like the Stag Beetle King were just evolving so rapidly
Oh
throughout
yeah.
the chapter, and it was just absolute insanity. Like I did appreciate that one, but like it was cute. It was funny. Like the fact that it lasted over 30 chapters, I think, was a miracle. But that was also again a series that got introduced in 2020, so it's another one of those series that it got as long of a run as it did just because of the year that it was published in.
Yeah.
Um,
Just to use marking as an example, I think there are a lot of manga who can be good by being short. I think marking is the perfect length. I didn't want it to be much longer than that. But since it's in Jump, you kind of expect it. You kind of want it to last as long as possible. And I just don't think it was that kind of manga.
no, I think that's fair. Based on the story that I was presenting, like I I mean, like I said, I didn't want the final arc to happen. I would have been content if we didn't have that one, if we didn't have the
Yeah.
World King arc. Um, so it is what it is, but I think overall it was still enjoyable, and yeah, I don't think it would have been as enjoyable if they extended it, because if they extended it, they probably would have gone more battle shonen with it, and I don't think it was gonna hold up as well.
No.
Like this isn't bo 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 bo. It can't do it. It would not work.
No. Not at all.
Um,
Yeah.
but that being said, other so are the other like Jump canceled, or sorry, Axe series that like you in particular were fond of by chance?
Yeah, there's a couple of like those early tens that I was talking about. One of them is a rom-com called Pajama no Kanojo, which I think it was from 2012. which was a 3-volume manga about a girl. I think she got on a coma. It's been a while since I read this, so I don't really remember the exact
Jeez.
details. She got in a coma, and then she appears as a ghost in her pajamas, like in the guy who likes her house, and he has to live with her. And it was really cute. And I don't know, it's one of those manga that I don't mind having lasted three volumes only because it's good enough. But it's one of those that I'm also kind of sad that it got canceled. And
Yeah, sure.
then there's have you read SWAT?
Not to
Um,
my knowledge.
SWAT was a manga that started. I think it was 2010. It started kind of like what I think Get Down is, kind of like those semi slice of life high school comedies. And then like halfway point, they saw that it wasn't working, so everyone just started getting superpowers out of nowhere without any explanation.
Oh,
Started like
jeez.
shooting lasers out of their fingers and things like that. It was so ridiculous the last like 5 chapters that I thought was very funny.
That just reminds me, not that it should, and not that it's a good reminder of U19. And
Yeah.
God, that series was just bad.
Yeah.
I and then he made Zip Man, and then Zip Man also did not make it to
Oh,
20 chapters.
uh, I wasn't aware it was the same guy.
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Uh,
That's what just makes it
Sad.
just that much more awkward. But oh my God. Um,
just one final from the thousands that I want to talk about. It's Angry Joker.
yes, I was gonna
Um,
say it if you didn't.
okay, because for those that are not aware, it was the previous manga of Tabata, which then wrote Black Clover, and I don't know. It to me, it feel I rather have not that I don't like Black Clover, but I rather have Angry Joker because it just feels so much more original. A lot of people that complain that Black Clover is not original enough. I think they should check out Angry Joker and see that he's actually capable of having unique ideas. And I think it's just that they didn't work, so he decided to I'm gonna try traditional shonen, and that worked. So why not run with it?
I think you're definitely right with that. Hungry Joker was a little bit off the beaten path for sure. Um, I loved the fact that Hungry Joker's power system revolved around like these essentially like uh, historic artifacts
Yeah.
like of like various people, like the fact that the main character used Isaac Newton's apple, and it
Yeah.
gave him the power over gravity. And then there was I could
Actually, don't remember any others other powers. Just remember him,
the
the sidekick girl, which I really liked, and
she had a painting based one. The
um,
the kind of sulky guy with the headphones, he had a hammer that was based on sound powers. And then one of the main villains, he had like this is gonna sound really dumb, but like it was either soybeans or green beans. But the beans were based off of like the theory of genetics and whatnot. So like he could
yeah,
mutate various things, and it was very cool. Like it, just like Black Clover, it did have like a gothic feel to it. It's just funny that the main characters for Hungry Joker and Black Clover are just complete opposites in terms of their personality. Like it's just
yeah.
so interesting.
The guy was like really I don't remember. Always sleeping and stuff. Like very calm.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to say.
Um, Other than that, like other than Hungry Joker, which I would love to get my hands on physical copies, but like I doubt that's gonna be cheap at this point.
Yeah.
Um, I was like some of the ones that I was just like, oh, this is kind of nice, but like I saw the axe coming. Golem Hearts was one where it's just like, oh, this is a cute story about essentially kind of like the kid was like Pinocchio in a way. He was like a living golem, but then he wanted to become like a like one of the alchemists or whatever, and like grew up, and like his alchemy was like specifically modifying his body to fight, but like just kind of a generic main character in that regard. Seiji Tanaka was another series that like, and I doubt anybody is gonna really remember this one. Like,
Yeah, I don't.
so this was one where like this kind of like down on his luck teenager, like all of a sudden this like businessman from the future like comes to the past, and he's just like, you are the president of this future company, and I am like your either the vice president or the secretary or something, and I've come back in time to protect you from these evil people that are trying to make it so that your corporation never comes to pass. But we also have to find the people that would eventually become like the head figures in your company. And I was just like, this is really interesting. Like, this is,
You know what?
a
That reminds
very
me-
different premise.
That kind of reminds me of Reborn, though.
I
Not
can see
really from
that.
the future, but like you're gonna be the president, the lead of the family. I'm here to protect you, and we need to find other people that's gonna be part of your team.
Yep, I can definitely agree with that. Other than that, some of the other ones that were kind of like, this is fine, I guess. I mean, you had Ole Golazo, which was a soccer one. It was really weird that like they were trying to promote it with Viz, but then like it got canceled within like 15 chapters or whatever.
Yeah.
Full Drive was a ping pong one, I think. Can't remember. That was one like I only read like 5 chapters, but sports
I'm remembering-
series just meh.
I'm remembering the covers from looking them a couple of hours ago. But yeah,
Yep.
for both of those.
Double Taisei, I thought had an interesting enough premise, but like the execution on that was
Double
little
Taisei
lacking.
was such a mess. I found it interesting just how messy everything was. But yeah, it wasn't because it was good, just because it was so weird that I couldn't stop reading.
yeah. It was the very failed version of Hikaru no Go in a way.
Yeah, but the thing is, it starts so simple. Like it starts like, okay, like Hikaru no Go and like Yu-Gi-Oh! Have 2 personalities and whatever. At the end, it's not really complex, it's just so chaotic for no reason.
Yeah, well, it was just a bunch of like, let's introduce this character and this character and this character, which you need to do, especially since there isn't a lot going on with what they're actually doing. So you need to have like a well-rounded enough cast of characters, but like it was also just very weird. So like it is what it is. And then they were like, oh, let's end it by having them play an endless game of what was it, shogi? I can't even remember the game that they were playing. I don't think it was shogi.
Yeah, I think like that they kind of got orgasms out of nowhere or something. I remember there was something like that
Whoa.
towards the end.
What?
It was
Okay.
I remember there was a chapter that was very sexual for no reason. I remember that.
I probably just blocked it out of my memory, but and then it would also be remiss of us not to mention Phantom Seer and Tokyo Shinobi Squad. And like I said in my Phantom Seer should have ended earlier video, I'm just mad that Phantom Seer got ended or was canceled after it started getting interesting. That is my biggest problem.
The last arc was definitely the most interesting.
Yeah.
In Shinobi Squad, I thought like the first chapter was interesting, but everything else just kind of meh.
The setting was really interesting. It's just that like the characters were not good enough outside of the main character and then like the female love interest. I thought like they were fine. The tiger guy was weird. The Ein, the sidekick, like he just wasn't fleshed out enough. The only other side character that I really liked was the one kind of Yakuza guy who did not have any shinobi skills himself, but was a master of shinobi tools. That guy I liked. But that's the unfortunate thing with Jump 2, like, again, other than sports series just not landing if you're not Haikyuu at this point, is that, like, sci-fi series are very hard to land properly in Jump. Or in general. Like, it's very difficult. But that being said then, we did talk about all the good stuff. I think we should talk about the bad stuff. Well, sorry. The one other one, Robot X Laser Beam, the golf series by the creator of Kuroko no Basket. I like that series, but I thought that the time skip was incredibly questionable.
I never read it, so I wouldn't know. I'm kind of curious, but I haven't read Kuroko no Basket either, so.
I mean, they more or less had very similar main characters, but one of the most questionable things that Robot X Laser Beam did is that it introduced a high school team. There was all this build-up for the main character to join the high school team, and then they time skipped to him becoming a professional golfer. They didn't do anything else with the high schoolers. Like, most of them, like, ended up quitting golf. Like, you had one of them is just like, oh, like, he's now a powerful rival, part of this new group of elite golf players. And, like, it was just like, wait, you're just skipping all of this to make him go pro? What? I was baffled by the move.
It's a weird decision choice, but we don't have many manga in Jump, sport manga in Jump that is like from professional. They're all in high school, so.
Well, other than Hinamaru Sumo, because Hinamaru Sumo, specifically the second arc, or the second half of the series, follows them in the professional sumo world. That is one of the rare exceptions. And then Haikyuu, obviously, with its final arc, is out of high school.
Yeah.
So.
But I feel like that's different. Because that's just to me that it's an epilogue.
That's fair. But then I did want to talk about some of the quote unquote bad ones. I think of the most recent ones that was bad. Obviously, well, what's also ending along Cop and Dolphin, I Tell C. I Tell C, I think, was just an unfortunate case of identity crisis. Like,
it's just the choice of killing one of the main characters, basically resetting a lot of things after what was it, like 5 chapters? That was really
like
weird.
6 or 7, but like they killed off one of the brothers, and then they had a complete mood change to the entire series.
Yeah. I will say the final villain. Well, I haven't read the last chapter, so I'm not sure if it's the final villain. But the last villain that we had, I found her interesting, at least. So
yes,
there's that.
But that was also, I question if it would have been a fine series if it would have started with that mood and kept it in the first place, rather than just going for like the really dark route. And then being like, whoa, backpedal. Hey, look at all these quirky characters. Ha ha ha. And the main character falls in love with the villains. Yeah, remember that? Like, I don't think it would have still... I don't think that would have made it fine success either. But, like, I don't know. That was just a series that had a really bad identity crisis and just did not land.
I'm a bit biased, but I think it would be better if it would have worked kind of like how Detective Conan and how Phoenix Wright works, where we're kind of slowly getting clues for who's guilty, and then we put them all together and get the case resolved. I think that could have worked, because we don't have any of that in Jump. We haven't had any of that in Jump.
Well, we do technically... I mean, but it's not in the physical magazine, because we've got Ran Kamonohashi in Jump Plus that's done by Reborn's creator. That's the
Oh,
thing, is that's the better detective series, period.
okay. I need to check it out then because I love this kind of series.
Yes. Um well, speaking of no personality, no identity at all, Our Blood Oath was just
Oh,
bad.
yeah. Our Blood Oath. The two manga that I consider the worst that I've read on Jump are Our Blood Oath and Guardian of the Witch.
Yeah, Guardian of the Witch was also awful.
Both of them are so bland. I think Guardian of the Witch is slightly better than Our Blood Oath because it has a coherent plot. The plot is incredibly boring, but at least it has one that I can understand. Our
Yep.
Blood Oath just so much of a mess.
Yep. I definitely agree with that. I totally agree. It just it did not land. And the art, like, sure, the character designs were fine, but like otherwise it still was just very subpar in general.
I, I,
Just
I think they were kind of going for the female audience, kind of like the cutesy
yeah.
boys, but it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't.
Yep.
I mean, I've seen that there are, and maybe there are for every manga, but there is a dedicated fan base of Our Blood Out, which I find baffling. But they are out there, and if they like it, they like it. But they do exist.
Yeah, that is honestly the crazy thing, that they do exist out there, but it is whatever. And then obviously a big time let's shit on this together series of this channel, Build King. Dear
Build
God,
King.
severely bargain bin discount Toriko was bad. It was bad.
I really need to read Toriko just see how much better it is to build.
It's so much better. That's the thing. I freaking love Toriko. Like, I have said on numerous occasions that Toriko is one of my favorite worlds in anime and manga. One of my favorites. So it's just disappointing that Build King was just so bad in comparison. Like, they copy and pasted the world and still made it worse. And then the main characters were just not enjoyable at all.
No, to me, I think the worst part of Build King was the main characters. I think they weren't really that interesting at all. I found the world, maybe because I haven't read Toriko, but I found the world interesting enough. I think the premise was cool. I think some of the elements that they used, at least in the very beginning, they were kind of cool.
Because it's copied from Toriko, essentially, but with houses instead of food.
Yeah. Once we got into the Upside Down Castle, that arc was kind of boring, and then the tournament arc was or the exam arc, was just a giant mess. And I love those kind of arcs. That's the thing. I love those arcs, and it just wasn't good.
Mm-hmm. And then, just a quick mention here: Takama Gahara is an older series.
Yes, I was gonna...
Like, that's just, it's not good. It's just,
No,
it's
I
not.
love it.
Like,
It's
you
not
got
good, but I
a
love it.
main character that wants to draw manga but is absolutely awful at it, which is a theme to the next series we'll talk about in a sec. But like, and he's got super strong powers and other people have powers, and then it just does not go anywhere, but it ends with this one girl who has the power to switch genders, and it's just so weird. And you got a guy that can turn animals into guns, but they're furry guns, and got an edgy guy who plays with shadows, and it's just like, oh my god, this is boring and bad, and you should feel bad that you made this bad. Like,
No, I'm gonna be honest. Takama Gahara is awful, but I love it's to me it's one of those X manga that it's so good that's so bad it's good, and most of it has to do with the final two chapters, which are just so insane. It's like they decided to jump 1,000 chapters ahead,
Yep.
and they want that character progression. It's kind of something that happened with Zippen as well, but I think Takama Gahara is just so out there that is incredibly funny. It just I don't know. I love it because of how bad it is. It's
Well,
my guilty pleasure.
Well, I will say it doesn't. In my opinion, it does not have the worst final axed chapter. Um,
Hmm.
we'll talk about that last, and I think you know what I'm talking about. It's not the other one, but um, which goes along with the theme of, like, with most axed series, you have one of usually two things that happens. You have either they just kind of leave things where they are, or they accelerate to give an ending. It's usually one of the two. Takama Gahara was one of those where they were just like, let's full throttle go crazy and like end things.
Yeah, I love those.
But
I
yeah.
want.
Um, Otherwise, another series I forgot, Hellward and Haguma. That was a series that I enjoyed,
Yeah,
but was unfortunately not interesting enough to keep people's attention. But I
I felt it
digress.
was. I felt it was that honestly. I felt like it was average. I didn't hate it, but I still didn't like it.
No, I
And the
agree.
ending. One of the things that I really disliked about Iguma was that they set up a bunch of things that they didn't resolve by the final chapter, and they said, okay, but there's gonna be an epilogue chapter on Giga.
And then didn't cover it.
Uh, yeah, the epilogue is just a random chapter that set up some more points that are not gonna be explained. So I don't know why they did that.
I don't
Uh,
know either. Um, but yeah. But speaking of creating manga and whatnot, another series that people either love or hate, and I am of the latter, is Time Paradox Ghostwriter. One of arguably the most contentious series that ended. Um, I would say as contentious, if not more so, than the cancellation of Actage, just because of the nature of the series. Um,
yeah,
but I hated Time Paradox Ghostwriter. I thought it had
I
potential, and then it just bombed.
I feel I like it. I kind of agree it had potential. It then bombed, but I think it kind of recovered in the end. So in my opinion, it's good at the start, good at the end, and then it just bad at the middle, which is the problem.
See, I don't
Um,
even necessarily think that it necessarily recovered all that much in the end. Like the fact that like all of a sudden you just got like this, oh hey, here's this plot device where you get to freeze time and continue drawing manga until you can actually do something good for once in your life, you dumb shit. Um, like because I mean that's the thing. Like this guy, he had all the drawing talent in the world, but couldn't write a story for shit. Which just goes to show that like the series was already flawed in and of itself because the people at Jump didn't decide to pair him up with an author. Like, there you
yeah,
go. That would have solved literally every problem with Time Paradox Ghostwriter. Like, all he needed was a good author, but Jump editors were just like, meh,
no.
whatever. But
Um,
I did not like the execution of it. I didn't. In they kept just focusing in solely on the main character and the main girl, and they didn't introduce other characters to try and round things out, and that
mhm.
tunnel vision just didn't work. I don't think it worked at all.
I can
But
see that. My main problem with it is that once we start having like people in Japan complaining about the manga, you can see the shift in the author in trying everything to change that opinion, and it just every chapter is just a mess, and it just jumps and jumps and jumps, and I don't like that. That's my main problem with the manga.
yeah, the once the whole plagiarism thing became just too much to bear, I think that just is what made it bad. I mean, like the I don't know. I think that there could have been a different angle at it other than making it like absolutely because at the end of the day it was plagiarism, like plain and simple. Like the guy ended up just copying the series and making it in modern day Jump. And plagiarism is a big deal in Japan. I mean, plagiarism is a big deal
Everywhere.
worldwide, but especially in Japan. So which, I mean, is kind of ironic considering how many series seem to be carbon copies of each other, but that's just because if
Mhm.
something sells, it sells, and so they just do it into infinity.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, I think the X series, though, that had the worst ending of all X endings, in my opinion, that was Samurai 8. Samurai 8 had the worst axed ending, I think, ever. Just
I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember.
so okay. So I mean, as we've said, like most axed endings either just kind of give you an ending where it's just like, yeah, like it ends like we're just kind of going into the future, and then you have other series where they just accelerate to an ending. Samurai 8's ending had like 4 different time skips in it. Like, and they just kept going through and going through and going through, and then they're like, let's age up the main characters, and then they don a full suit of armor, and then they attack and they defeat the guy, but then like, hey, I'm tight or not Taite Kubo, what am I saying? I'm Masashi Kishimoto. Look at all these neat character designs that you guys are never gonna see because you canceled my series. And then like had it where it's just like the main female girl is just like, I'm gonna become a samurai now because my boyfriend died because he time traveled too hard or so. Like it's just, oh my god, it was so bad.
I'm starting to remember a little bit more. Yeah.
Like I just, oh my god, it was obnoxious.
I just didn't like anything from Samurai 8 in general. The only thing I liked about Samurai 8 was the 2 side characters that appeared. That were like the villains. Then they joined the team. I don't remember their names because I don't remember
because they weren't important enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. I liked the amnesia guy. He was fine. The other one was just kind of annoying. Like, it is what it is. Like, that series just had so many things wrong with it. So many things, and just
It kind of sucks because the concept is interesting. I think the world is interesting, yet the world building is not.
And the power system was just overly complicated garbage.
Yeah. The power system, the lore, just everything just too overcomplicated wasn't interesting. And I think they could have simplified things and went to the angle because it was a cool angle of like samurai digital things. I just went full on with that without overcomplicating things. It would have been a fine series, but it just wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention just relegating female characters to a praying and not actually involved role. That was just the worst thing that happened. The worst thing. Like, hey, Masashi Kishimoto, your female character writing was a little weak in Naruto. Think you can fix that for Samurai 8? Nope, I'm gonna make it worse. God. Just... Oh man, it was.
I'm not sure if you do have any other bad manga. There was one I want to talk about from Jump.
Oh, feel free.
Neolation.
I never read that one.
Oh,
so
okay.
I will admit there was a batch of new series that I never read from Shonen Jump. That were ones that we did get in English, but I was just like, I don't care about this. I think like the one of the other ones that I also did not read was Yui Kamio Let's Loose. I did not read that one either. But
that one's good. That one, I like that one. That one was a mess. And the problem with Yui Kamio is that it started boring. It's sort of like a boring rom-com. And then it became like a funny rom-com. And then it became a battle manga, with a very interesting battle manga, because a battle manga that where only the woman had powers, which I thought was interesting, because the main character was a guy, and he was the one that didn't have powers, so it was the girl that was saving him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got canceled, basically. But it was a mess because it had a bunch of identity crisis, but every change was interesting in some aspects, except well, the very start, but I thought it was nice. But Neolation was a manga that was just so incredibly boring that otherwise wouldn't have anything interesting to talk about. With the exception of the fact that when it got cancelled, it had a 3-chapter backstory of the main character, and those 3 chapters were phenomenal. They were amazing, and if it had started with those 3 chapters, I think the manga would have done well, because the problem was that the main character was so boring that really wasn't anything interesting, not with him, not with the side characters, not with the villains. And then they just dumped us with a super interesting backstory. You fleshed him out, and then they got canceled. Like the flashback ended, we had another chapter, which was the last one, and then it was so interesting to me that it chose that route.
I don't know, man. You know, sometimes you wonder, like, all right, is it the author that is the cause of this? Is it the editor that pushed it a certain way? Which, I mean, one could even argue with Samurai 8 was like, okay, did they just not have an editor to, like, rein in Kishimoto, and that's why it had the issues that it did? Probably. But, like, I feel like so many people have talent. They really do, but, like, it's just misguided in some way, and just it does not come out like it should. And, like, there are series that definitely could have been a lot better, but because of how they started or whatnot, that just cemented their place in history as an axed series.
Yeah. And I think that's why I appreciate, despite the fact that Jump axes so many manga, that it doesn't, they don't fire the others. Like when a manga gets axed, they get a second chance, and a lot of times they get a third chance if the second manga gets axed. So I really do appreciate that they keep trying.
Yes, they've got a very large talent pool, and they might not be able to get back in immediately, but a lot of people are able to get back in within a couple of years. Um, and I mean, we've got several instances of that right now. I mean, Horikoshi and Tabata were both, you know, mangaka that had series that didn't do so well the first or second time, but then they made it big with My Hero and Black Clover. Ryuhei Tamura was somebody that did it in reverse. He did really well with Beelzebub and then couldn't replicate that success with Hungry Marie or Cop and Dolphin. But, like,
Also happens.
yeah, it is what it is.
But I mean, even like 2 of the big 3 got canceled. Like Kubo had Zombie Powder, and Kishimoto had a manga that probably nobody remembers.
He had a baseball one.
That was a one shot.
Gotcha.
But he had a manga that was technically a one shot because it got 1 chapter and it got canceled.
Jeez.
So yeah, and I don't think it ever, the one shot version of that chapter is available in scans. I don't think the actual one shot, the actual first chapter is. But yeah, just you can make it even if at first you fail. I think that's the lesson we have here.
I agree. Before we close things out, I did want to talk about a couple non-weekly Shonen Jump Axe series that I miss dearly. From Jump Square, Desert 9 was one of the series that I really enjoyed from last year, but was sad to find out that got axed this year. Also different because this is a series that is monthly compared to weekly. So I'm very interested to know how that process works for how Jump Square, you know, serializes new things and when they decide, oh, it's time to introduce new stuff and get rid of the old stuff. So that is what it is there.
I wasn't even aware that there were many monthly X, because generally when I see X manga, and I actually have one that is not shown on Jump that I'm going to talk about when you're done with yours, but they're generally like all weekly. So
yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think, well, with the monthly ones, they'll usually, if they get axed around like 15 chapters. Seems to be the typical case there, but I digress. And then on the weekly shonen magazine side of things, the two that I'm the most disappointed with their axing, and one could contest it with the second one, but Tricks Dedicated to Witches and Hitman were the two series that I was disappointed they got axed. Tricks Dedicated to Witches, in my opinion, being the magic trick version of Dr. Stone, with a magician time traveling back to the era of the witch trials. And then Hitman being the Kodansha version of Bakuman, but with the main character being an editor rather than a manga writer. Although he was then ended up dating the person he was editing for, but I digress. That one's questionable about the whole axing thing, but like that one got to about 80 some chapters, and then they were like, "Hey Koji Seo, end Hitman and create a new series." And then literally in like the same issue as like the final chapter, he started Goddess Terrace Cafe.
That is weird. And I never read any of those, and I was expecting not to read. But that one, Hitman, I'm probably gonna try to check it out.
I would
Just
definitely
because I have
recommend it.
Yeah. And since I think it makes sense that the last one you mentioned is from kind of like Bakuman, because the one I want to mention is also kind of like Bakuman.
Gotcha. And like I said, Hitman is really good because it explores the Kodansha side of things compared to the Shonen Jump side of things, and it explores more of the industry as a whole because it's the main character is an editor compared to a manga author. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate what Hitman did, and again, I'm just sad that Koji Seo was just like, "Hey, stop writing this rom-com and write another rom-com."
I mean, maybe it wasn't selling, but
No, it wasn't,
That is-
sadly.
it's very weird. The one I want to talk about was Shuken Shonen Achi, which is by the same guy who wrote a more famous manga that I haven't read, which is Jitsu wa Watashi wa.
Another one I don't know, but go on.
Okay, so that one is kind of that has an adaptation, came out a couple years ago, but basically it's about a mangaka or a teen mangaka who joins an high school that is specific just for mangakas. It's kind of like a tournament, and it was really fun. And the art style was really vibrant, which I loved. It was full of energy. It was very much a sports manga about mangaka, not necessarily like Bakuman or like Hitman that you were talking about. It's much more like a shonen experience of a kid who's trying to fulfill his dreams. But it was really fun. And then it got canceled like 5 volumes in, I'm looking at. It wasn't one of those axes where it just, they just stopped the story there. So it was kind of sad. I really liked it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know, it's I feel like there's a lot more out there. Well, obviously there's a lot more out there. The unfortunate thing is, I mean, when it comes down to it, we were way more exposed to Weekly Shonen Jump because Shueisha actually gives us Weekly Shonen Jump. They actually give us all of their weekly series, which is so nice. But like, there are so many other ones that we'll never get to see unless fan translators touch them, and even then, if they find out that a series is canceled, they tend to drop it themselves. I mean, that was like the case with another Weekly Shonen Magazine series, Beast number 6. Like, I read like 4 chapters of it, and then it got dropped because, well, it wasn't that interesting, but it then got canceled like 16 or so chapters in. So, but yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot, and most people will never know about them.
Can I just talk about one last manga?
Yes.
I actually did a written review of this one. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a video on. It's Banana no Nana. I'm not sure what magazine it is, but it is basically someone wanted to do a One Piece ripoff um, with Yuri characters, and it's just the most bland shonen ever, just like the most traditional shonen battle ever. I think the only interesting part about it is that the powers come with a disadvantage. So for example, the main character has the powers of creating bananas, which is kind of weird, and so she has to eat a banana with the peel on every day to use their powers. And then the side character is someone who's have like super kicks, and she has to wear a miniskirt, which is just, it's an excuse for ecchi, but she has to wear a miniskirt so that she can use her powers. But other than that, it's just kind of like a very bland shonen. But the ending, it ends with like appears, because they have to find like, it's their One Piece. It's not really One Piece, like a continent or something. And it appears like one of the guys who supposedly, it's kind of like the Roger of the world. They thought he was dead, but he was alive, and he just kicks one of the main characters to the moon.
What?
And then we get a time skip where that person got a bunch of crewmates that we never heard about, fights that guy, and then that guy kicks her to the moon. And then they find out that the moon was actually their One Piece.
Oh my god.
And then they have sex on the moon.
Oh my god. Well, I mean, what else are you gonna do on the moon?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
One of the most fantastic endings I've read.
Dear Lord. Now God, my morbid curiosity is gonna make me read that now. Oh my god.
Yeah. And it's pretty short. The problem is that it is very boring up to that point. But if you can last till there, it's really fun.
Gotcha. Well, at the very least, that's all the series that I had to cover. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover before we wrap things up?
No, I think Banana Nana was the last one.
Yeah, that's that's one way to end the podcast. Dear God. All right. Well, Crash, I'm gonna let you do one final plug then before we wrap things up here.
All right. So if you like manga and like videos about manga history or just manga recommendations, check me out at Manga Crash. Just got 500 subs, so another one will be pretty nice.
Woo! Congrats again for the 500. I know that's been a work in progress, so I'm glad that you were finally able to hit that benchmark, and I look forward to joining you for the stream for that. So should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this video is gonna come up before or after the stream, so it might be.
Well, I'm gonna try and upload it for, well, tomorrow in terms of.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Editing, editing, whatever. I'm not gonna put any crazy visuals on this. I am going back to the podcast format, baby. Audio is king. Good. That's maybe I'll put an audio visualizer on it, but who knows? Yeah. That's just kind of how it is. But yeah,
it's a podcast, so
exactly. That's the important thing. It's a podcast. You don't necessarily need to be watching the screen for over an hour, but some people do. So it is what it is. Well, that being said, I want to thank everyone that has listened this far. Back on the podcast, if you like the Axel and Friends name for the podcast, please let me know. I do appreciate any and all feedback on this, and if there are any topics, any guests that you would like to see on the podcast in the future, or if you would like to appear on the podcast in the future, if you are a content creator, please let me know in the comments down below. Follow me on Discord, follow me on Twitter, message me wherever. Links to both of those are going to be down in the description down below. But otherwise, for now, my name is Axelablaze. Thank you guys for joining in. And hopefully your favorite series doesn't get axed in the future. Unless it's Kowloon's Ball Parade, because that is definitely getting axed in the future. Bye-bye,
Yes.
everybody.